Today, we talk the tight end landscape. We talk tiers. We talk ranks. We talk which tight ends we're targeting to win our dynasty leagues, all that and more. And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. If you've been following along with our tier series here today, it's just me, your host Justin, and David. JP is sitting this one out, but don't worry, we got all his insight. His ranking and tiers are included. So we are excited. Well, honestly, the tight end landscape, it's a little desolate. I am actually pretty guilty, David, on feeling like this was a really deep position, the deepest it's been since I've been playing fantasy, and that has not been the case. Did you have the same hopium I did, or were you a little bit more temperate?
I was hopeful, and at this point in the season, it sure feels like it's the same as it ever was. A couple of guys here and there, and other than that, you're just hoping for a touchdown.
It feels a little bit like that for sure. 80% of our viewers are not subscribed. So if you're not, we would love that. So that being said, David, go ahead and define our first tier of tight ends. Let's hop right into the content.
Yeah, pretty much in general for this tier, unless you've got a true like positional advantage guy like Kelsey was for a while. You're looking at these young guys that we think could be tight end one overall, certainly have that in their upside at least. This is a pretty small tier right now when, like we alluded to at the beginning of the episode, we were really hoping it was going to be bigger at this point. Read those names for us.
I have one team where I, in fact, actually have both of these guys in a two tight end premium. It makes me so happy. Those two superstars, these young studs, are Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. I think the first question I have for you, David, is Bowers the undisputed tight end one at this point with what we've seen?
And it kind of has to be, right? He's, I believe, tight end two in points per game, and his gap between 2 and 3 is about the same as 1 and 2. It could be off by like a point or so, but roughly he's right in the middle of 1 and 3. And Kittle's having a heck of a year. I do worry a little about what's going to happen when he has someone else there who's an NFL caliber receiver taking some targets. Man, he's a stud. We all liked him coming out. There's no reason to back off that opinion at this point. With the way the rest of the tight end class has performed compared to him, he's got to be tight end one. Don't you agree?
Absolutely, easily have him as the one.
Just because we're talking tiers here, let's talk about a price to go between these two guys. It was a best ball league, but I essentially netted a second to go from Bowers to McBride. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. Kind of feels dirty right now, but it's best ball and that team's rebuilding. So I think by the time I look at this next year, I'm going to feel a little bit better about it. Do you think a second does it for you, or you need a little bit more?
Think it just depends. If I have a plethora of assets, if I'm absolutely loaded, I might want a little bit more than the second. In a vacuum, a second does it. But if I have like a team where I think having if I have a team where I think having Brock Bowers for the next 10 years as just this young guy who I think the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, to me, even though it hasn't been limiting Trey McBride's upside so much, I think in the back of my head, it's going to be for his career or for as long as he's a Cardinal, and Bowers doesn't have that same, like, we consider elite talent there. So like in my head, I feel like I want a little bit more, but I think the second is good process. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it makes me feel a little bit better, especially because in best ball, the extra asset means a little bit more than it does in lineup. But still, holding on to what you can do with Bowers and that name value, I do think maybe you could get a little bit more. But man, Trey McBride's, community is pretty high on him too. So I think you could do a lot worse than having either of these two players on your roster. Let's go ahead and jump to the next tier. Justin, you want to tell the audience what we're looking for here?
Yeah, there's a quite a bit of hopium here. It mentioned it's a depressing tight end landscape, and there's those guys that we're just ready to have them let us down in this tier. And then we do also have the tight end one on the season, who's a little bit older, who he looks good. So a lot of hopium, and then that guy. And David, starting off with that guy, can you read that list of players for us?
Sure. That guy is George Kittle, followed by TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts, Sam Laporta, and Dalton Kincaid. So I want to start this off talking about that guy, Justin. Kelsey was tight end one well into his 30s because of the positional advantage he created. Kittle is currently 2 points per game over the second place tight end, and third place is closer to 18th in points per game than they are to Kittle. Feels like a pretty big positional advantage right now. I doubt he ever catches Bowers, but do you think he has a chance at tier one ever again in his career?
I think if he finished the season tight end one, there's a argument for him to be up there, but it's hard to see it happening. We're so ageist, and these other guys, one of them, in Bowers we just talked about, is tight end two and practically a decade younger. Just having them in the same tier, I think it's more likely that he's alone in tier two and everyone else is in tier three, that he makes tier one. But can he separate from the rest of the class that we have him with? Hot Pitts, Laporta, Kincaid, absolutely. That's not hard to see. It's the other part that's difficult, because that whole time Kelsey was doing it, well, I don't know. I guess there was Mark Andrews, who was young and kind of keeping up with him approximately during his peak, and he still was at about the same age. It's just so hard to say it's possible for me. Do you think he can, David?
I mean, I phrased the question the way I did on purpose. I don't think he's going to approach Bowers. I do think maybe you made a good point there. He might be in a tier of his own below Bowers eventually. Maybe, him and McBride and Hawkinson, or, one of these three other young guys, if they can actually start showing some consistency.
Please, Pitts.
I've got my fair share of all of them, so I would take any of them being a hit and not all three being misses.
Oh, please.
I just think the thing that stood out to me was third place being closer to 18th than to first. Like that's a positional advantage. That's what we're looking for. If he's going to give me a few extra points on my opponent every week, that's valuable.
And along that positional advantage, unlike the other guys here, we're not sure what any of them are going to give us the rest of the season. Having just seen this Ayuk injury, CMC being a question mark, I don't think there's any reason to believe, barring injury, which you can't predict, that Kittle won't be the tight end one, not on the season, but like also from this point until the rest, right? As well, which would of course make him tight end one on the season. I'm actually looking at making some trade offers. I have no shares right now of him. Are we offering a non-playoff first in a non-tight end premium? If we really believe that's what puts us over the top to win a championship, we're already number one in the league, but it's close. Let's say it's a team that's probably going to be like, based on points for, it's going to be the 6 overall unless they somehow sneak into the playoffs.
Especially in a non-tight end premium, I don't think I'm quite there. I think if I could get something back, I'd think about it. I think I would send a playoff first if I felt like that was my whole. Actually, I can go back to last year a little bit and explain why it makes me a little hesitant. If we look at the next guy in this tier, TJ Hawkinson, I had a team that was steamrolling the entire league. I was like 13-0 or 12-0 at the time. I forget exactly which week Hawkinson got hurt. I was starting Dalton Schultz at tight end, the only position that wasn't just dominating for my lineup. I went and bought Hawkinson, and he played one game for me and then got hurt, and I haven't seen him since. And that team is doing all right, but I definitely would have preferred the draft capital that I had traded for him. So I mean, anything could happen. We've seen Kittle get hurt before. I just think a non-playoff first is a little too pricey. Probably even in a tight end premium, maybe 2 tight end premium is when I have to start thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a interesting point to talk about for sure. Now I kind of want to touch on one of my Detroit Lions, a guy that I had as the tight end one going into the season, who honestly, I just almost feel like it's just the fact that I had him as tight end one going into the season that's still holding him in tier two and not in tier three at this point. In Sam Laporta. David, you've done a little bit of digging into target share here. Can you give us some insight on what's actually going on here?
I'm not sure it's going to be any good news for Laporta managers. Well, hopefully we see a little uptick. There's a few overall reasons for his decrease in production. Teams averaging about 5 less pass attempts per game, about half a passing touchdown less per game. That plays an impact. But the biggest thing, really, it's Jameson Williams, guys. You look at target share between last year and this year, Amon-Ra is about the same. I think he actually is the exact same. Weirdly, Gibbs essentially the same. You look at the combination of the role players and how they're taking targets away, it's about the same. Jameson Williams went from accounting for about 7% of the team's total targets last year to over 17 this year. That's caused Laporta to drop from about 21% last year to just under 10 this year. Is it they want to show that Jameson Williams' pick wasn't a bad pick? Is there something wrong with Laporta? Is it the way teams are scheming against them? I don't have the answer, but it's definitely concerning.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of exposure to Laporta, but I will tell you this. If he has a blow-up game this week with the Jameson Williams suspension going on, I'm definitely shopping him. Note to self, don't share this video URL in that league.
What's your asking price going to be?
At that point, I think I'm probably looking to try to get a tier 4 tight end when we get there, and a first would be like my dream. I took him in the 3rd round of a startup this offseason in that league, so I feel like I have a little bit of a sunk cost fallacy there, but I also don't think that's unachievable if he has a big game game or two here with Jameson out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think right now I wouldn't take less than a first anyways. So a big game or two, and you throw in when you get to tier four, you'll see they're not the most valuable of players. So throw in a little extra piece after a couple of good games. I think you can get that done.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping. And now talking about these a little bit more valuable, even if all of their production hasn't warranted players, what is the price to go within this tier? So I'm going to start with a third round pick. Are you taking a third round pick to switch between any of these players, or is it a little bit bigger gap for you? Obviously, I'm going to throw one caveat that if Kittle is your tight end, of course, you're probably not looking to tear down off of the production.
I was going to say, if I'm competing, the only one I'd consider is Hawkinson if he shows he's healthy. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay up to get him because he's a big part of my playoff run. If I'm looking at one of those three young guys and someone wants to give me, I don't know, it might take more than a third, but something like a decent handcuff or something, or depending on what my team needs, just a decent throw-in piece, I'd move between any of those last three there. Hawkinson's really tough to tell because we just don't know, but he's back finally. So I kind of want to see it, have a good game or two before I sell him.
Yeah, I think I agree on that third round draft pick between Kincaid, Laporta, and Pitts. So it's a pretty decent sized tier. I think it's probably closer like a second that I want from the top end of just what we've seen from Hawkinson and what we're seeing from Kittle. I just feel like they're both a little bit safer, or at the very least valuable, based off of they're not disappointing us actively.
Yeah, like most of the position.
Hawkinson just being injured has actually helped your market value because everyone else has been so bad. All right, moving on, David, to our third tier, an interesting one. Can you go ahead and kind of define what we sort of see in this tier here?
Yeah, this one is a little bit interesting. Half of it is some young guys that have shown to have a decent floor and some upside, maybe can ascend up a tier or two before it's all said and done. And then a couple of old guys that have won plenty of leagues for plenty of managers, but maybe are starting to slip a little bit. You want to go ahead and read these names?
Your Green Bay Packers superstar Tucker Kraft, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and Jake Ferguson. Now, Travis Kelce is actually my highest rostered player of importance. I think I have him in 7 of my 13 leagues. I bought him pretty cheap. I didn't pay really over a first for him anywhere over the last year and a half because his price has been down. And while I was hopeful he wouldn't be so distracted by Taylor Swift, does he actually belong in this tier? He is the tight end 15 on the year. And well, I mean, he's old. He's not producing any difference making statistics. Are we just holding on to name value here?
That's definitely part of it. I think the pro case, in my opinion at least, would be if you were to look at all the tight ends in tier three or lower and give a probability that they go on the league winning tight end playoff run, like who's going to have a higher chance than him? Maybe Andrews, maybe a guy like Kraft, I guess. We might hit a guy in tier four that could have a case, but I would guess Kelsey probably has the highest probability. Now, what is that probability? It's not great. I'm not trying to say like buy him for a playoff run. Man, he could be the tight end one for 3 weeks in a row, no problem. We've seen it done before. He's still got Mahomes. When they need him, he seems to be able to turn it on. It's not great, and he could definitely fall fast from this tier, but I think that's the pro case at least.
Honestly, without giving too much away, I think I'm gonna bring this back up. I'm gonna say I think there might be 3 guys in tier 4 that I would say I might pick over Kelsey rest of season. And if that is the case, I don't know if he belongs here. I think I probably actually should be sliding him down a tier almost at this point. Although he could do it. There's no Rashee Rice. Unless they trade for Cooper Kupp or something, like he should be getting all the targets, but even so, he's disappointed a bit without Rice there already. He only had like one real nice game. Last game, he didn't do much. Game before that was so. Like tight end 15 on the year at his age. Like if you're in the comments, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. I don't have any shares, and I'm glad. Kind of felt like he was going to lose some value this year, and that means the cliff probably is coming. And I don't love the pro case that I made, but I feel like that's probably it. The chance at him leading someone on a playoff, run. Kind of the same with Andrews, though. If you think about it, like he's had some good weeks, and strung together a few weeks in a row, mostly buoyed by touchdowns. Though, do we feel the same about him, or can you make a case as to why he should stay and Kelsey should fall?
Age, and that's it. Also, the possibility of Andrews is coming off of that injury from last season. Obviously, he's supposed to have been fully healthy. However, it's always possible. especially when you see the fact that he's had a couple better games string together in a row. Some combination of, hey, they can't double team him because there's so much else going in on the offense, with likely Bateman actually not looking terrible. Although, JP, you shouldn't roster him. He's just a role player who opens things up unless it's best ball. That's fine. And then you have, of course, Flowers likely. You have Henry just opening up these running lanes and Lamar playing MVP football. I don't think there's any reason to think like that he can't at least provide top 10 upside for the next 3 years. And if he can do that with the ability to win you weeks on 2 touchdowns because Lamar can throw for 2 touchdowns, like having him in tier 3, which is not even necessarily saying he's top 10, but since we have 11 players on the screen right now, like I think that's very justifiable, because at this dirty of a position, I think playing in a 2 to 3 year window is really all we should be doing past tier 2.
I'll be honest, playing in a 2 to 3 year window is maybe all you should be doing in your whole roster process. Not quite, maybe a little further out. Can you tell me what's going to happen in 4 years from now? No, nobody can. So
I do feel really good about Bowers and McBride. That's about it.
probably, yeah. I think with Andrews, my concerns are that we've already seen him get phased out of this offense to a degree. We've seen another younger tight end on that roster that they like, and very clear holes at wide receiver that they might try to fill. I don't know how many years you can really count on him. But I do want to change the discussion from being negative to being a little more positive. Let's talk about Tucker Kraft for a minute. What do you think he has to do the rest of the season to get into tier 2, and is tier 1 in his range of outcomes even?
He just has to keep doing what he's doing to be in tier 2 at the end of the season. Honestly, if he keeps the type of heater that he has been on, tier 1 is probably also in the range of outcomes. You're a little bit more tuned in than me. Without asking the question, I know I didn't fully answer the question about tier 1, but before I do, I just want to ask you, do you think that the Musgrave injury, when he comes back from it, is going to change anything? Or from your exposure to reading from beat reporters and just, of course, the fact that you're just smarter than me, what do you think is going to happen there, David?
This one's a little complicated because we have seen Musgrave be successful, especially in the receiving game. But when he got hurt last year, Kraft came in and it looked, just from the eye test at least, that Kraft was a much better fit for this offense and what LaFleur wants out of his tight end position. I was a little worried of how they were going to split snaps once they were both healthy. They were pretty much even, if I remember correctly, by the end of last year. And that's why I kind of leaned on the draft capital for having Musgrave slightly higher going into the season. But in the back of my mind, I always knew Kraft was the better fit. Now that we've seen them play together healthy this year, where Kraft has dominated the target and snap share. Maybe he eats a target or two a game away from him, but he's not going to take it away from his upside, in my opinion. No, I think Kraft's the guy there when everybody's healthy, no matter what.
I really think if he finishes as a top 3, maybe even a top 4 tight end on the season, he's knocking on the door of tier 1. But I do have to say that he can't be tight end 3, but be closer to tight end 18 than tight end 1, which is kind of where tight end 3 is right now, because that's like, it's a sexy number, but it's not really helping my team, right? If that's the case and he's like priced near tier 1 because of that, I'm selling. I love what I see. I wish I had a higher exposure. I was pretty out on this Packers offense, not because I didn't like the offense, just because I didn't think I thought it was going to be a pretty even split in the tight end room. And in a tight end premium, is a playoff first for Tucker Kraft. It's uncomfortable. I don't know if you can do it for less. Are you willing to take that chance if you need either tight end or you think you can flex him consistently?
I don't think you can get him for less. And unfortunately, I sold him just before he took off, and I still got a decent return. But looking back, I wish I would have held him. I really do think it takes a first, especially in a premium. I've thought about sending it. If I'm being honest, I haven't had the courage to quite hit send yet. So I guess I'm not quite there, but I've had the trade queued up, looking at the confirm send button, and I just haven't hit it.
Which league, just out of curiosity?
It's one you're not in.
That I won't edit it out then.
It's also one where I have Andrews, who's starting to turn around. So that's part of the reason I've been hesitant. I need to spend a first to have a second tight end.
It's an uncomfortable point, but especially in a tight end premium league, I think it's a very fair price. In a non-tight end premium league, it's just hard to pay that first for somebody who, even though he's been doing well, statistically is not performing as a difference maker like a Kittle is, right? He is performing at a level that you're happy to have in your lineup. It's just so hard to spend that on a tight end because, well, they're tight ends.
All right. Well, that's enough about this group here. Plenty of discussion and probably plenty of controversy. Do let us know in the comments below if you think certain players should be higher or lower. Let's go ahead and jump to this fourth tier. Justin, you want to tell us what we have in it?
Actually, I think these are some of the best bang for your buck values at the position. They're guys that are either lower because age. One of them had the worst quarterback throwing to him forever, but that's kind of changed. A little excitement here. Some concerns about target competition, perhaps, or just an offense that hasn't excited us. But these are all guys that I think are all kind of like PPR options with some tight touchdown upside. Like these are all guys that I think have some combination of youth and close to top five upside. One guy that I don't feel so comfortable with that top five upside on, but a lot of vet type of guys that are usually the type of guys I like to target at this position. And who are those guys, David?
Yeah, we'll start with your favorite player in the NFL, maybe. Oh no, that's not Deontay Johnson. Sorry, who's that? Evan Ingram. Right. We had Evan Ingram, Cole Kmet, David Njoku, Dallas Goddard, and Pat Fryermuth. I assume Fryermuth is the one without the top five upside, in your opinion.
It's hard to see it. Who knows? I mean, Russ is cooking. They're letting Russ cook, so it could happen. But no, I joke a little bit there. Does have a path to being the number two passing option in his offense. And it's an offense that did just flash something, but he certainly is the one I feel least confident of. And to be honest with you, he's the only one in here that I would be surprised if he finishes as tight end one at least 1 week this season. Like the other guys, any given week, I think could be the tight end one. I don't expect any of them to be the tight end one on the season, but they have that as a weekly outcome. I don't see Muth that way. I mean, if he has a 2 touchdown game, it's possible, of course, but I just don't expect it. Where the other guys, Goddard also, it's hard to see when everyone's healthy, which they currently are. There are some really exciting names here, and I want to start off with Njoku, David. I mean, we are now, about 48 hours recording time post the Deshaun Watson injury. It's interesting because this is a guy who smashed last year without Watson, and he just had a smash game with no Amari Cooper, and now with somewhat competent quarterback play throwing him the football. I actually prefer Njoku over Kelsey rest of season, and Njoku is young, so I don't know. Are we too low on him right here? Did we not react enough to what's happened in the last few days here with the Cooper trade and Deshaun's injury?
It's definitely possible, and I kind of wish that we had a week of Winston at quarterback, a full week to further evaluate this before doing our tiers, but this is just how the timing worked out. Look, Njoku was great last year with Flacco. That offense was a lot better with Flacco too, though I just don't know that even with improved quarterback play, if this offense is going to be competent. And I think that's important for the touchdown upside. I do think it's very possible that he deserves to be higher. I just worry like that offense has just been so bad, man. I know Deshaun Watson was a huge part of that, probably most of that, but like Winston's a backup for a reason. If he was that good, he'd be starting somewhere. We love him in fantasy. He's a terrific character. His speeches, his mic'd up moments, it's great for the NFL when he's playing and talking, and it makes us laugh, and we love that. But he's also thrown 30 interceptions in a season. So, and like you said, they don't have Cooper anymore. They might trade Chubb. I haven't heard anything official there, but like, why wouldn't they shop him if they could? I think probably we should have put him a little higher. You're right, but there's still risk involved for sure. I'm not ready to just say he's going to be like he was last year at the end of the year.
To be honest with you, I feel like the top of this tier as I'm looking at it, great podcasting here. I'm just like a professional here. Like we're presenting this information, and now I'm just like, are we sure that Ingram, Komet, and Njoku don't belong in the same tier as Mark Andrews, Kelsey, and Jake Ferguson?
Titans were so hard to tier, man. I'd have to look at my own personal tiers, but I might have even done that. I don't think that I did, but what's the price to go between those guys? Not too much. Then what do you do with Kraft? Do you leave him alone? Do you put him up in tier two?
My personal tiers, I do have Kelsey, Njoku, Ingram, Mark Andrews, Jake Ferguson, Cole Komet, and Dallas Goddard in tier 3.
Well, maybe you're smarter than us.
I don't know. How do I differentiate between those 6 guys right there? Outside of Kraft, because of his youth and what he's doing, let's just look at Mark Andrews, Kelsey, Jake Ferguson, Evan Ingram, Cole Komet, and David Njoku. Do you feel strong enough about any of these guys that you would take one of them over another one if I put 2/3 on the other side of the trade offer?
Cole Kmet's kind of young, but I'll get to that here in a minute. He's the player I really wanted to talk about in this tier. I think Andrews I would keep for 2/3 and a premium. I think I'd keep Ferguson as well because of the age. Kelsey's the one that really stands out to me. If I could pivot off of him to a younger guy who's going to give me the same or more production with less name value. I get your point, and you're probably right. I'm not going to fight it too hard. I think when you average three different players or people's tiers together, it does look a little weird at points. And this is kind of one of those points.
Talking about Cole Kmet, he is younger. We were hands off in the offseason because of as we were going through our preseason work and we were watching preseason games and snap counts, he was split in time and he had three potential alpha wide receivers there. Yeah, he's producing, David. So give me kind of your bull case on Kmet, if you will.
He's 25, so he's very young. He's tied to a good quarterback. They did just extend Komet. I forget exactly how long, but I think 27, 28, something like that. And now they could cut him after this year, next year. But why would they at this point? He has at least 3 catches in every game except the first game. He's got a weekly finish of tight end 1 and tight end 2 on the season, so he has the weekly winning upside. As I was making this show sheet and the graphic, I thought to myself, kind of feel like maybe Cole Komet's one of those guys we have take lock on, something we've kind of highlighted throughout this series, an issue that I know I have, and I think Justin, you would agree. You can get into that sometimes too. I kind of wonder if maybe we should.
No, my Deontay take is flawless.
And I'm sure there will be some people in the comments that would agree with us that having Komet in this tier is kind of take lock. Though that was kind of my big takeaway looking at all this, and I think you might be right on the reshuffling of these tiers. It's just so ugly, man. This position is just so ugly.
Yeah, it is hard to differentiate between and whether this is one big tier, this tier 3, tier 4, or it's two separate tiers. The fact of the matter is everybody in this tier has warts, with the exception maybe of Tucker Kraft, who his only wart is that we haven't seen it long enough to really push him up more, right? Like it's ugly. It's ugly in these streets.
I bet if JP were here, he'd be able to talk some sense into us. This is why we miss JP, you know?
Yeah, we really need somebody more level-headed to really get rid of our player take locks that we got going on here, David. And David, moving on to a much smaller tier, a tier that I think is much easier to justify. Let's move on to tier 5. Can you define this tier for us?
Yeah, these guys are all younger with some upside, some, name cachet that if they start going off, you could see them rising up in value here. Pretty small tier though, like you said, Justin. Who we got here?
Yeah, so in this next tier, we have Isaiah Likely. We have the rookies that have had any sort of hype so far, Ben Sinnott and JT Sanders. It's interesting because Sinnott, the highest draft capital rookie, has been absolutely invisible because of superstar Zach Ertz. And that's to me, it's a little concerning. And then JT Sanders has been getting some playing time, but it's been an anemic offense. Isaiah Likely, pretty interesting guy, but are any of these guys in tier 5 actually somebody you want to put in your lineup, David?
No, not really. Look, if I have to start one right now, it would probably be Likely just because the upside. Sanders is starting to get some usage that might indicate that you might be okay starting him. Like you said, that's just a bad offense. I don't want the third or fourth target on a bad offense, really. This is all upside, and that's why I don't know if you would agree, but my favorite player in this tier has definitely been Sinnott. We understand where he's at and why he's there. He's taken a little time to develop. Trey McBride has followed the exact same path behind the exact same guy. I know Ertz is older in this situation, but look, it's Sinnott's running routes and not getting targeted, but it's not like he's running routes that are early in the progression, and he's not expected to get targets on those plays. I'm not worried about him yet. I still liked him as a prospect, so I still like him now.
Yeah, and watching Daniels and the way that they're scheming things up for him, there are a lot of plays where he is, trying to go earlier in the progression. They are trying to make it easy on a rookie quarterback. So
Read throws.
having a guy not be early in the progression for that type of a scheme that they're trying to do to make him be successful, you can't hold that entirely against him. And I mean, you've already pointed out the fact that he's essentially a lock to be Trey McBride because he's behind Ertz. So, I mean, with that type of logic, how could we possibly?
It follows for me.
I definitely agree. He's my favorite long-term investment in this tier 2, followed by Sanders. It's just hard for me to get on the Likely train just because, I mean, how do you predict when he's going to have those touchdowns? But that being said, I think we're about to move on to a tier where you might ask me to ask me the same question.
Yeah, this last tier is kind of ugly. It honestly could be like 10, 15 players deep. It's a little shorter here, but any touchdown dependent tight end And if you see one who's not on the list, go ahead and put him in it in your mind. I mean, basically anybody who, if you have to put him in your lineup, you feel like you have a chance at some points, but you might also get a goose egg.
Yeah, and I want to add a little bit to that. Like the guys we have here, I actually want to add one more guy to this. They won't be in the graphic, but I think these are the guys that we really actually, if we have to pay a third for one of these guys to fill our tight end position, somebody else goes down. Like these are the guys we're probably willing to like pay a third for break glass emergency. We'd rather start these guys over Will Disley off of waivers, even though he just had a good game, or Hayden Hurst if he's ever healthy. Like these guys are the creme de la creme of the crap, is what I would say. And those guys are Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry, Cade Otton, Jawan Johnson, Jonnu Smith, and even though there's no graphic there, I'm going to throw on Zach Ertz as honorable mention because honestly, he's been doing some nice stuff in my lineup. I'm not mad about having to start him in tight end premium league.
Yeah, like I said, there could be several guys you could throw in here. Colby Parkinson. I mean, Taysom Hill when he's healthy, just because of all the things he does. Basically, anybody that you're willing to start could be in this tier theoretically.
Yeah, because I could definitely predict your answer here. Maybe with one exception that I might be able to make a case for you, but you're taking any other guy in this tier, even those couple that we don't have on graphics. If you can get a third to move between anyone in this tier, you're taking the third plus, right?
Oh, to move between anyone? Absolutely, yeah. I'm wondering if we're just taking a third in general. Actually, I have an inbox offer I was going to bring up, and I was going to have you and JP decide if I should take it. So, Justin, I guess one of my trades
Ooh.
is in your hands, buddy. You ready?
Am I in this league? Let me ruin your team.
You are not. I'm rebuilding. I'd have to check. It's a premium, but I don't think it's quite two. It's either 1.5 or 1.75. Offers Otten for Stover, 26 third, 26 fourth. I'm a rebuilder. Picks are off a playoff team now. He doesn't have a ton of flexibility, but should be competitive next year. Doesn't have 25 picks, so I can't upgrade him. I hit accept. I'll do it right now.
I would take that. I'm a big fan of Stover's longer term potential there. I think Schultz doesn't look very good. You get a third, you get a fourth. I'm taking that. The upside, absolutely. Those third, that fourth, Stover, those could all be boats.
They could all be boats. They could all be K Dottons.
But actually, K Dotton is a guy that I think is interesting because of the injuries. But the reality is it's very often, especially when you have like a gunslinger like Baker Mayfield, that there's a wide receiver pool, right? There's a tight end pool of receptions, there's an RB pool of receptions for most offenses, right? There are guys that transcend that, right? Who are just special talents, right? I think we've seen enough of K Dotton to know he's not a special talent. He's not going to transcend that. He certainly could see one or two more targets a game the rest of the season because of the wide receiver injuries that they have there. Targets that go to Kate Otten compared to a target that goes to like a Tucker Kraft guy that can take anything to the house or a Kittle who can take anything to the house, they're different, you know? So I do think this is a personally, when I wanted to bring up whether or not this increases his value at all, to me, I think it's just probably a sell window before people realize he's still just very mediocre. Do you agree?
Kind of that situation that you like to talk about where when we do see a sell window, we like if you can get more than his previous value before the window open, that's great. But you should still be willing to sell at that price because he's just going to go back or below it eventually. And I think that's exactly what you have here. Rest of the season, obviously, Cade Otton's going to be way better than Cade Stover. But as I said, I'm not competing the rest of this year. As soon as next year, Otton and Stover could theoretically have similar value, but certainly the 26th, third, and the fourth in there.
I probably would take just that.
Considering I got the offer a couple hours before we started recording and we were talking tight ends, I thought it might be fun to bring up. So,
and one last thing I just want to talk about, whether it's these guys or anybody, mystery tight end, not image on the screen. Who is your favorite trash tight end rest of season, David?
Yeah, that's a tough one. If I need to start him, Kate Otten might be that guy. I love me a little wild card at a position that's crap where you don't have anyone. Can I say I'm gonna say Taysom Hill. I know he's not on the graphic, but Carr's hurt. If he comes back while Carr's still hurt, he's going to get a few snaps at quarterback. He's going to be running back. He does it all. He can give you a zero, but he can give you a tight end 1 week. And I'm not sure any of these other guys really have that as a probable outcome.
You know, I think I'm going to take Hunter Henry here just because out of all of these guys that we're talking about, he's the only one who I think's just recently seen like a positive change in situation. I do think Drake May, he's showing out so far. I like what I've seen. Obviously, he's not winning games. It's hard to win games when your defense is soft. Can't believe the coach said that.
If it's true, it's true.
Bill Belichick called him out about it too. I mean, you could say it in the locker room, but to say it to the media, that's one thing. But anyways, that's
let me ask you this. If the defense wasn't soft, would they be reacting negatively to that or would they care? If they care, it just shows they're soft.
Shots fired. But anyways, we're not an IDP podcast, so I do think Hunter Henry has like I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up the season as a tight end one. That being said, I would be shocked if he winds up the season as a tight end one that matters. But that being said, I certainly think he will have weeks that matter. He just had a week that matters, and I think he'll have more.
So, since you bring up change of situation, I find this interesting. I just want to ask, do you think going from Tyler Huntley to Tua Tagovailoa is a good change or a bad change for Jonnu?
I think it's a good change in the fact that he's more likely to catch touchdowns because I think the offense will be moving more. I think it's like one of those net neutrals.
Is it maybe a bad change though in some tight end premium where he's not going to get as many catches, so the premium's not going to affect him as much in a positive way?
Yeah, it's a coin flip. He's pretty boom bust touchdown dependent guy anyways. I feel like Tua's been out for a while and he has not been. I was able to get him on waivers on Saturday in a 1.5 tight end premium league. Like he's not a guy people were excited about to begin with. So honestly, meh. I'd rather have him have it in a better offense, and I just want that offense to not be bad, please. All right, so I feel like I've about overgrossed myself out talking about especially tier six. I know it would be really bad podcasting, but it would have been so much more fun for us if we could have started with tier six and went to tier one because that way I wouldn't have this vomit in my mouth at the end of the episode.
That'd be an interesting way to do tiers. I don't know. Let us know in the comments if you'd be interested in that. I'd be willing to try it.
I think it'd be worse for the clicks, but it'd be better for my mental health. That being said, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dado Construction Podcast. We hope this was as useful for you as it was for us. Please make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dado Construction Podcast, until next time.